Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to share a personal project of mine that I called the Vector series. Now, some of you who've been following me for a while may remember that I actually published some images at the beginning of 2021, but this is the first time that I'm making a video about it. Now, quite a few of you may have found my channel from my fine art architectural photography, and you'll look at the Vector series and you'll think, aren't they the fine art images that you created? Yes and no. This Vector series is kind of like a spin-off from my fine art architectural photographs. It's just one of those quirky ideas that I had a couple of years ago, and I'm sharing it with you because maybe you want to have a go. So maybe if I take a step back and explain exactly why I created the Vector series, it will make a bit more sense. So as an architect, I'm naturally drawn towards quite strong, bold, graphical images and in turn graphical buildings. But sometimes I might photograph a building that doesn't really fit that description, and then I'll edit it in a certain way that it looks quite graphical once I'm finished. If this is the first time you're hearing anything about fine art architectural photography, then in a nutshell, to create these black and white, very contrasty, very ethereal looking images, you take the photograph obviously, and then there's a lot of editing. And in Photoshop that requires a lot of selections, and then you edit the image, you spend hours, maybe days of your life creating the image, and then you publish the photograph on social media, wherever you want to. Maybe you print it and it goes in a gallery. That would be the best. And I personally never revisit that Photoshop file. So that got me thinking, is there another way that I can use this Photoshop file that I spent a long time on? Enter the Vector series. So on my website, published in January of 2021, I've got a blog. You can read that in your own time, but it'll give you the behind the scenes and essentially what this video is about. And I'll put the link to that in the description below. But in summary, this is one of my original videos, 2017, I think, in Glasgow. And you can see here, this is my final edit. But then if you scroll down, you can see it's the exact same photograph, but just edited in a slightly different way. I'm going to talk you through, and I'll show you the Photoshop file, exactly how I edited some of these. But you can see as I scroll through, very strong graphical images, in some instances not even photographs really, but I've got these Photoshop files and I'm just repurposing them. So essentially the Vector series is a behind the scenes of how I edit my photographs. If you were to remove the layer that is the photograph, what you're seeing here is all the gradients that I've applied in Photoshop, in all of the various layers and everything. Okay, so let's start with this image. This is in Glasgow. It's a museum designed by Zaha Hadid, and that's the original photograph. And if I go into the file information, you'll see that I actually captured this in October of 2017 with a 5D Mark III and 24mm tilt shift. This is the original file, and then if I switch this layer on, you can see the final edit. In order to create this final image, I created a lot of selections. So if I go into load selection, this is my old workflow. Now I use paths and I create fewer selections, but this is how I used to do things. So if I click on the facade, you click on that, you'll see that's the main zigzag element of the front of the museum. And then you have to go into that, and then I would just use a gradient tool and I'd create my shadows and highlights this way, in a very crude way. But you can see by creating those selections, I can then manipulate the shadows and the highlights. So if I switch off the final edit and then I scroll all the way down, this is the original Photoshop file, so I can show you the layers. So I've got a white canvas and I've got a black canvas, and then I'm going to use either blending modes, layer masks, or a gradient tool. So if I go back to this, switch on my base layers, and then you'll see I've gradually built up all of the layers, just going load, select, gradient, or painting in, whatever your preferred Photoshop method for using and building up layers. This is really quite fun. Compared to editing photographs, you can see here, this is very quick to turn around. You've already done all of the hard work. You've got the Photoshop file, you've got all the selections. And all you need to do is go select, load selection, facade, and then G for the gradient, and say, actually I want some shadows to come in from here, or I want more shadows coming in from this side, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Now going back to my original point about graphical images, okay, if I zoom in on the entrance to this museum, you'll see that there's a very strong highlight around the door. This is a decision that I made when I was editing it 7 or 8 years ago, because if I switch off that layer and go back to the original, you'll see it's a very dark front door. I specifically thought I want some brightness, making that a real feature. Very similar to the inner trim up here. So if you have a look at the top left, switch that off, it's actually darker. You can see here, I've created highlights where they didn't exist at all. Okay, let me show you a few other examples because every single image has got a different kind of style to it. This again is in Glasgow. It's actually the building in the background of the last image. And you can see here, again, I've added a bit of sky. I mean, you could add a gradient, just a black and white, but I quite like adding some of the images. So if I switch off everything, you can see exactly how I've built it up. So I've got, again, the original image, and I've got my canvas, my black and white canvas at the bottom, and then I'm building up the layers. You can see all of the pillars there. In a way, this is very much like going into your channels and looking at your hard masks, but then doing something with it. Because in a way, these images could be art in themselves. Let's just say I don't want to complicate things with photographs at all. What you're looking at here is all drawn. Okay, this is all drawn in Photoshop using the fill tool, the paint tool, or the gradient tool. There is no actual pixels from a camera in this. But when you look at this, I see my final edit because this is exactly how I edited that photograph. This is where I put the shadows, this is where I put the highlights. Let's take a look at some other examples. We'll do two more in Glasgow because the buildings in Glasgow are pretty damn good. This building was called the SSE Hydro when I went there, but I think that may have actually changed now. That's the original file. Got my white and my black, and then background buildings, the SSE Hydro, nice and strong. There you go, nice little flourish. There you go, that's a piece of art in itself. Done. But of course we keep on going. We're gonna add more layers, more depth. Got a foreground, just building up all of the layers. Sky's a big one, and then the way that I edited this image, I actually wanted to emphasize that they were curving in all directions. So it's obviously curving around the building, but it's curved in that direction, a bit like a balloon. So I made sure that I made selections of every single one so that I could, in fact, emphasize the curves. The sky is a photograph, but the rest of it is completely graphical. It's all created using gradients in Photoshop. So again, another quite striking image. Let's do one last Glasgow, same building from the other side. If you switch off the sky, it becomes very, very graphical, doesn't it? Yeah, I did decide to keep the sky in the final edit. That was my final edit. If I switch off everything else. So if I were to edit this image today, I wouldn't edit it the same as I did in 2017. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. I like these images. I enjoyed going to Glasgow and capturing these, and I enjoyed editing them. Go to the canvas and then loading my selections. Look at that, strong graphical elements straight in. Just turning on all of the layers slowly, literally like you're drawing something in Photoshop. And of course, you've got all of these layers. You've got opacity and you've got layer blending modes. These all don't have to be at 100%. So you've got so much control over the final image. Right, we'll do one last image. It's not in Glasgow. This is the London city skyline. That was the original file. Let's go down memory lane. When did I take this photograph? Even longer ago. A Canon 5D Mark II. And that was captured in July of 2016. Right, so I've got my canvases, I've got my sky with a gradient, then I start to bring in some of the buildings. So you can see I've deliberately kept, this isn't a halo or an editing defect. You can see here, if I go in, I've got a white outline around the building. Because if you don't have that, it started to just blend in with the sky in the foreground a bit too much. I think that is the final image I ended up with. So you can see subtle detail in the buildings. That's entirely up to you if you want to kind of merge these with photographs. But remember, the whole point of this is it's not an edited photograph. You're just using the photograph as like a little smidge of detail. So in 2016, I edited this photograph. I put that Photoshop file away until 2021, and then I came up with this to repurpose it. Now, interestingly, my website says, this is just the beginning. Every fine art image that I create will also become part of the Vector series project. That's a lie. I have not done that. I've been too busy making YouTube videos, going out, taking landscape photographs and everything else that you've seen here on this channel. And I'll make myself accountable by saying in this video, I'm definitely going to create more because I've created so many more fine art images since 2021. I've got so many more Photoshop files to reuse. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and taken something away from it. If you create fine art images, what do you do with your Photoshop files? Do you revisit them or do they end up on a hard drive like mine? If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.